welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. I thought I would give you a little look around my sewing room today. I did do a tour of this room last year when I first moved into this space, but it has changed a little bit because my needs have changed since last year. Not only is this my sewing space, my creative space, but it is also my workspace now, and this room gets used every single day. So I thought I would show you around, show you some of the things that have changed and some of the things that I've kept the same, and also share my plans for how I want to develop this room further. So the door on the right is the door into the room, and then the double doors on the left, that is a big cupboard that definitely needs some sorting out. I like to use these trolleys to store bits and pieces, things that I need and that I can access really easily. And then at the other end of the room you can see I have a chest of drawers here with lots of different things inside. I have some of the things that I've made displayed on the wall, and this bookshelf is the big change from last year, and this is where I store all of my fabrics and notions that are in my shop. So this large table is my main workspace, and then to the right of it you can see this little pressing station which has my iron and my wool pressing mat, and some of my cutting tools are displayed on this pegboard, my rulers, my rotary cutters and my scissors, so that they are out of the way of little hands, because that's always my fear. As some of you might know, I have a young son and I love flower fairies, and that's just a little bit of decor that I like to have in my room. My mum bought me that recently. And of course a picture of me drawn by my son. And these little drawers which I showed in my previous video, nothing's really changed about those. I love that they have pictures of sewing things on the front of them, like a tape measure and buttons. And I just keep bits and pieces in here, like those press fasteners, and there's even some knitting stitch markers and labels and things in that one. I have my basting pins, some buttons, and I also keep some different types of needles in here. So I have lots of different hand sewing needles, the milliner's needles, sharp ones, bigger tapestry needles and things for darning, and also my machine needles. I've tried all sorts of different brands of needles. You name it, I've tried it. I love testing different things out to find what I really love. So the biggest thing that has changed in my pressing area is that I have a different iron. I recently got an Oliso iron for a recent birthday, and I could do with a larger pressing mat really, because the Oliso is the iron that you keep in this horizontal position. But rather than buy another mat, I'm using this Clover pressing board, which is a super handy tool, and I'm actually going to get some of these into my shop soon. It has a sandpaper board for keeping your papers nice and still, it has a cutting mat, and then on the other side where it has this nice floral design, you can press with your iron on there, and you can fold it up, like that's what I'm keeping it like, folded in half, and I'm putting my iron on there. And then when I want to press, I'm actually pressing on the wool pressing mat. But if you were going to take your work around with you, maybe out and about or to a retreat or a class, this patchwork board is really handy for that. I also have this Cricut mini iron, which is really great for pressing small things. I do find, however, that the whole thing does get quite hot. Not so hot that you can't hold it, but the plastic outer part does get really hot, so just bear that in mind. But I really love it, and I've been using this wooden clapper that I bought from a sewing shop in the UK called Guthrie & Garney, and this is really great for getting your seams really flat in traditional piecing by machine. That's what I've been using it a lot for when I was making my granny square quilt, and I've started some other machine pieced quilts as well. So that's what I really use the big iron for, and the clapper. I don't tend to use them for EPP as I'm going along. In this drawer I have some labels for my son's clothes, and then I have the Clover mini iron And I also have just other bits and bobs, some thread cards with the different shades on, and just other pieces, some thimbles and things like that. On the shelves underneath, this is where I house many of my sewing boxes, and recently I've been enjoying using these boxes with different compartments in, because you can baste all of your shapes and get them ready, and I really like doing that. It feels organised. So you can see here with this project, I'm right in the middle of that rosette, but I've got lots of pieces ready, and you can keep a pair of scissors in there, so everything is to hand. So I really like doing that. I've separated the colours out in that one. And this is another example of another sewing box where I've got some pieces for a project that I was in the middle of. I do have a lot of projects that have started and haven't continued with. That's just the way that I am. I like to go with the flow when I'm making things and just make what I feel like making on the day. I don't worry too much about having lots of things that are half started or half finished, because that would take the enjoyment out of it. For me, it's just about stitching and having fun. So that is my pressing station. In this big wooden box I have a lot of my embroidery threads, and these are threads that I've collected over time. These are all the DMC or anchor threads, and yes, this is a collection that has built up over time. I have some crewel wool as well, because I do like to do some crewel work, and I've tried to separate them by colour. You can see there's a few there that are not in the right places, but in general I try to keep them organised by colour into the different compartments, and I do like to keep them on the skein rather than wind them onto cards all the time. So these two trolleys that I mentioned earlier on, they house a lot of my fabric scraps and little bits and pieces that I need to hand. So these bottom two trays, if you like, they have smaller pieces of fabric on, pieces that have been left over from projects. As you can see, strips and things like that. The bottom tray has some fat quarters of linen and other things there. Oh, a bit of scrap that belongs above. Lots of Liberty that I keep there. Precious pieces that I haven't cut into yet. So that's just where some of that is kept. That's a block I was testing out. And at the top I have these Cath Kidston boxes with much smaller pieces of fabric inside. Again, I really love to use scraps, so I keep them all, and I always seem to find a use for them. I see scraps like a paint palette, where you can just choose your colours and put them together, and the more scraps and the more different types of fabric the better, and it doesn't worry me about them being small. I always seem to use them. So I have some starch, some elastic, some glues and different things there, tailor's ham and other cutting boards. People often ask me about cutting boards, but I've bought them from Aldi in the past and they're really great. And this is where I keep my papers and also my acrylic templates. So I have some packs of acrylic hexagons, pentagons, diamonds, that sort of thing. And at the bottom I have some embroidery hoops, lots of different ones, and this bag which has got a little project in, well, part of a project that I'm in the middle of. I always keep my projects in different pouches and things, but for those hoops I'm planning on making lots of mini hoops of my work, my embroideries and my EPP, and I want to fill the wall with them, a bit of a gallery wall, because this is a big blank space. I was going to put a design wall up there, and you can see the Velcro that I put across the top of the wall. It needs to come off. I did try to Velcro a big piece of batting wadding up there, but it just ripped. So I do have a special curtain rail that I'm going to put up there from IKEA. When my dad puts it up, I'll tell you all about that, because I'm hoping that's going to be a really nice way to display what I'm working on. It's nice to be able to spread out your quilt when it's a large one, and see how it's going. So that's my idea for that wall. It will be my pieces in hoops, and I'll be able to hang a quilt down when I want to see what it looks like so far. So over on my main table again, I have these baskets where I've put fabrics together that I'm working on for a particular project. And then I have lots of little bits and pieces. This is something my husband bought me, and I just like looking at these little things. They really keep me feeling happy and positive. That's what my son bought me. And it's just nice to have little personal items around your workspace, isn't it? So in this little box I have some small scissors and thimbles and my pin cushion and that sort of thing. Little sewing notions that are just cute and nice to use. One thing you might not know about me is that I really love aromatherapy, and I usually use aromatherapy oils for relaxation and de-stressing, but recently I've been trying these creative, happy and positive ones, and I like keeping them in the sewing room, and they really help me to feel energised when I'm creating. And here's a hexagon storage basket, which is one of my patterns. Here's my sewing machine, and I just have that out on the table. I am going to make a cover for it one day when I get around to it. But you can see behind it I have a large cutting mat. It's a huge cutting mat, and that cutting mat is essential to my preparation for my kits and things for my shop. But I really hate the colour of that mat. It's so bright pink on that side, dark purple on the other side. It gives me a headache. I can't stand it out on the table unless I absolutely need it out. So that's why it's stored at the back. And a daylight lamp for me is essential. I can't sew without some sort of good lighting. And again, some little wooden flowers in vases on my window ledge. And this is Hunka Munka from Beatrix Potter. Just a nice little ornament that makes me smile when I see it. I have a collection of vintage sewing machines, and this is just one of them. It's a hand-turning children's Essex Mini sewing machine, and it works. And I do have 2 other vintage sewing machines, so maybe one day I'll do a video about those if anyone's interested. Another new addition to my sewing room, you can see I have some drawers under the desk. That's for my packing supplies for my shop, but this pink set of drawers is a new addition. On top I have the Grandmother's Rose Garden quilt that I showed you in my previous video in these storage boxes. And then these pink drawers are so handy for keeping all my pieces nearby that I need on a regular basis. So I have my pins, I have little wooden needle cases, hand cream which I use all the time. That's my mini tripod for my phone for doing tutorials. These are all the sewing machine feet and bobbins and things for my dukey. So that's all in the top drawer. And then in the next drawer down I have some of my art supplies like my sketchbooks and things like that. And the bottom is paperwork for my business. These drawers are not very well organised, but in the bottom large drawer I keep things that I've prepped for my kits, so fabric cut up and things like that. The middle drawer is just a disaster drawer with lots of different things all mixed up in there. The top right hand drawer has my sewing machine, manuals, instruction books and that sort of thing in there. And then the other drawer on the left hand side actually has some cotton and crochet hooks in there. I love crochet and I've actually picked it up again recently, but not with this super fine crochet yarn, which makes something like this. This is a project that I want to work on one day. I want to make really lacy crochet doily type things, but for now it's just stored away in there until I have more time. And on top I have some pretty tins. I have just bits and pieces like marking tools and pens and screwdriver from my machine and that sort of thing. Things that I reach for quite often. Needle threaders, of course, hand sanitizer, my measuring tape, things that I really need on a regular basis. I love storing my projects in little cute tins and pouches. I have quite a collection of those. So when I have an idea, something I'm working on, this is just a little peek at this one, I tend to just put everything together that I've prepped, and quite often these ideas might not come to fruition, it's just something I'm testing out. In this tin I have been basting 1-inch hexagons for quite some time now, just using odds and ends, scraps of fabric. Most of the colours here are quite bold and dark, so before I start stitching them together I want to add in some more neutral and pastel shades to tone it all down a bit, but I was trying to use fabrics that I didn't know what else I was going to use them for, just small pieces and scrappy, that sort of thing. And it was really therapeutic to make all of those hexagons actually. I did it at a time when I wasn't feeling too great and it was a nice distraction. So in this bottom drawer of my little house sewing box I have my Saju embroidery threads, and those are the threads that I sell in my shop. I absolutely love those. The colours are really beautiful and they're lovely to stitch with. And you can see some of my pieces on the wall. I want to add more pieces to the wall over the next year and try and fill that space with things that I've made. So over in this corner is another pink filing cabinet. This is another new addition, and when my husband saw this one he said, what is the point of those drawers? They're so small, what on earth are you going to use them for? But there are 15 shallow drawers here and I'm going to use them for keeping different projects in. They are purely project drawers, bits and pieces for ideas I'm testing out or things that I've started and haven't finished. And I'm finding that it works really well at the moment. I'm really liking this idea. I'm not ashamed to say I have a lot of things on the go, and they are in the middle of because they are quite lengthy projects. And here's a little peek at a crewel work project that I've just started, and I'll be able to show you that in a couple of months. But they're just things that I've started and I want to keep all the pieces together and not get all mixed up, and that's what was happening. So what I really love is that the drawer comes out really easily and you can just take it over to your workspace. You can work from the drawer, everything's there, and then when you've finished you can put it all back inside again. And that's a little peek at something that I was making, and you'll be able to see that in my next video. So I'm loving those drawers, they're working out really well for me at the moment. So on top there's another tin and some more storage baskets and bags. That's a sneaky peek at something that will be coming up soon as well. And yeah, I'm finding this corner is really working out well for me at the moment, so I'm really pleased. So this big bookshelf is the biggest change probably to the room, and this was essential for keeping all the things that are part of my shop. A lot of the stock of the hexiform and kits and things is kept in another cupboard and in another room as well. It's amazing how suddenly when you have a little shop that it can really take over your house. So the shelves are essential for keeping my fabric bolts on and all the other notions. And this is where I keep my personal supply of hexiform and papers. So in those pink baskets there are all the different hexiform shapes that are in my personal collection, not in the shop collection. And this is my personal collection of sewing threads. Anything for the shop is on the bookshelf and they're all in boxes. But this is my own collection of Aurifil and other brands. And I really like having it out on the rack because I can see what I've got. I don't find that it gets dusty or anything like that. I try to keep on top of cleaning the room regularly anyway because it is my workspace and it's really important to me that it's really clean because I'm selling things. So I don't find that there is a problem with dust or anything like that. There's a little peek at some of the Liberty fabrics. That's not my personal stash, again that is for my shop, and some of the fabrics that I have on bolts ready to make up my kits. And of course there's a photo of my me and my gran, on my wedding day. I think she would have loved to have seen that I have now my own little shop selling sewing things. I think that she would have absolutely loved that. So I just keep my shop stock in boxes, and actually these 2 boxes are my personal fabric stash. They just look so pretty on the shelves and I wanted to keep them there, but the rest of it is shop stock. And this is another view of the room. Again, I have some big boxes on top of that wardrobe. That's what I keep my big quilt projects in, so all the pieces for my Patchwork of the Crosses quilt and other things are in those boxes. And when I'm just working on a section of it, that's when I'll pull out what I need and then put it in a tin or a bag or a basket or a drawer, work on it, and then I can put it away again. So this inbuilt cupboard is now where a lot of the shop stock is being kept, and I won't show you that, it's not very exciting, it's just all in boxes. And there's just another view around the room. I have some blank space on the wall still, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. Whether or not I put another pegboard up, I don't know. But I'm really happy with how this room is evolving and changing. It's really nice to work in here, and I feel so lucky that I do have this space to create in. It really does bring me a lot of joy and a lot of happiness, and I do realise how lucky I am to be able to do that. So tell me what your sewing space is like. Let me know in the comments. I love hearing about other people's sewing areas. I didn't always have a big room like this, and I realise how lucky I am to have this space to work in and to create in as a job and a hobby. I used to have a tiny table in a really small room, and in the past I used to have hardly any space at all. But let me know, what sort of sewing space have you got? Have you got a really big room? Have you just got a small area or just a drawer with your things in? Let me know. And if you like this video, it would be really nice if you could give it a thumbs up. That would be really lovely. I really appreciate you coming to look around my sewing room. I hope you like what you see, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again really soon with my next video. But until then, take care and thank you ever so much for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.